Hey, we are back. My name is Andrea Miller. I'm the host of Open Relationships Transforming Together. I'm delighted to be joined by Joanna Schroeder and Brian Adkins, our amazing producer. We've got a great show teed up for you today. We are featuring puberty experts, Vanessa Kroll Bennett and Dr. Cara Natterson. And we are covering so many great actionable takeaways. But before we get into it, just a quickie reminder why we are doing this show, why we're so committed to bringing you the show with our full hearts. And that's because there is a relationship crisis raging. There is a loneliness epidemic and mental health crisis. And if you say, nah, that's not really affecting me, I'm going to push back a little bit and say, I bet there is an opportunity for this show to make a positive impact in your life. We are super committed to showing how to be more open emotionally to one another, because that is how we thrive in our lives. That's how we transform together. So let's get our guests on the show and make the introduction.
Our guests are actually here in the lobby if we want to welcome them onto the show.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to welcome Dr. Cara Natterson and Vanessa Kroll Bennett to our show. We are super fans of you ladies, and we're just really excited because you've suddenly become so famous and you're here on Open Relationships. So thank you. I'll do a quick intro for you both. Dr. Cara Natterson is a pediatrician and New York Times bestselling author of 10 books. Vanessa Kroll Bennett is a national bestselling author, writer, and puberty educator and entrepreneur. They co-host the Puberty Podcast and run the puberty positive brand Oomla. Their new bestselling book, This Is So Awkward, Modern Puberty Explained, was an instant hit. It's been everywhere, including in Oprah's book club, which is awesome. So great. I know. Let's cue that. Yeah, get that big audience in our studio. Cheering away. Between them, Cara and Vanessa are raising 6 teenagers. So in addition to all that professional insight and expertise, they really are the experts. So, oh my God, my first question is: would you guys like a shot of tequila?
Always.
Like 6 teenagers. Wow. No, in all seriousness. Your book is filled with so many insights and actionable takeaways and incredible research. But for people who only like to listen to this podcast for 5 minutes, what is the one piece of actionable advice that you'd like to give? Just that one takeaway that's like, if you can't read the book, just do this.
Take do-overs. So this is Cara. This is my biggest advice. You will get things wrong. Even if you're right, you will get them. You will say them wrong. You will do them wrong. And that's okay. Just try again.
And mine is lecture less, listen more. The more stressed we are, the more anxious we are, the more complicated the topic, the more likely we are to start talking, and to back up the dump truck and give our kid every piece of information we know. And they stop listening. And rather, they want us a little bit of information, and they want us to listen to them. So lecture less, listen more.
I heard an interview where I think it was Vanessa, but I don't know who exactly it was, where they asked for advice and you said, zip it. Zip it.
That might have been me.
Yeah, my co-author and I immediately texted each other, Christopher Pepper and I, and we were like, did you hear that? Zip it. It's so key. Listen more.
I might have said at one of our talks that people should shut their fat traps. And then I was like, oh, I think maybe that's not an acceptable phrase to use anymore. So,
you just dove right into it.
It probably bears stating, though, that we are very good at giving this advice. We are not as excellent at taking our own advice. It's really, really hard to just shut your mouth and let them talk and do the listening, especially when you know better. Like when you know exactly where the conversation's going and you know what the solution is and you're a tactician and you're goal-oriented, it's very hard. So we're excellent at saying it, and Vanessa's a little more excellent at doing it than I am.
Aw. Well, I love that. And it's so helpful. I mean, there's so much in that just to take away. But the idea of you guys as experts are still practicing it and calling yourselves out is a relief to hear as a mom who, I mean, between Joanna and myself, we have 5 kids. It's like we put so much pressure on ourselves as parents. So to hear you guys say we even have a hard time taking our own advice is really a gift. So thanks for that.
I mean, if you think about it, between all of us here on this call, there's a lot of children being raised. And I have 2 teenagers. One's in college, one's in high school. Andrea has a teenager who's in middle school, and she has a burgeoning adolescent. So we have a lot of experience on this call and a lot of questions, and hopefully you all have a lot of answers.
We're here for you.
Well, but I love in your book and in the other material that talk less, listen more. But I also feel like you guys did a really good job of emphasizing asking better questions. And I feel like we all know that. But then as parents, we often don't do that. So is there any other advice just other than just to try to remember to practice asking better questions?
Yeah, I mean, the sort of how was your day or did you have fun, right? Which is like inevitably the answer is, how was your day? Fine. As my now 21-year-old says, he used to say fine for like 3 years. His answer was always fine. And I was like, why did you always say fine? And he said, because there's no follow-up to fine. If I say good, you want to know why. If I say bad, you want to know why. But fine is like totally neutral. I'm like, oh, you little shit. Like, that's so smart.
Right. Yeah. So what do we say instead? Like, what are some suggestions of what to say instead?
I mean, it depends on the age of your kid. With younger kids, I would say like through middle school, you can ask something like, what is the funniest thing that happened today? Because then it's an open-ended question. It's in their language. Like, you're not like, what was the most edifying experience you had today, right?
Like, that sounds like a nerdy question I'd ask. Okay, I want to do that.
So would Cara and I. I mean, if we had our druthers, we'd be like, enlighten us. So what's the funniest thing that happened today? With an older kid, you want to like get at underneath, like, oh my gosh, you had a lot of stuff going on today. What were you so relieved about when it was over?
That's a good one.
Right? So it's getting at like the sort of granularity of the experience and also knowing the temperament of the kid. Like, some kids want to dump their crap all over you and complain. And some kids want to go straight for the light, humorous stuff because that helps them get, to the end of the day. So it really depends on the temperament of the kid.
And if they trust that you are not going to have it go in one ear and out the mouth to other parents, which is a very important skill, do not just overshare because you'll lose your kid's trust. But if they trust you, then you can do a prompt. Like, sometimes I'll just say, okay, give it to me. Give me one good piece of gossip that I'm going to love. And
I love the gossip.
Right? Because it's, first of all, who doesn't love gossip? And second of all, it's such a good springboard for conversations about them, but they don't feel like they're being put on the spot because they think they're talking about someone else. And it's a really nice side door into a conversation of, well, what would you do? Or, oh, that's interesting you say that. Let's get into the details of it a little bit, right? It's never about the other person.
You have to prove that you're not going to judge the kids involved in the gossip.
Oh, yeah.
Because the minute they feel like you start judging their friends when they share stuff is the minute they stop sharing stuff.
One of my favorite questions is, who got in trouble today?
Oh, it's a good question. That's a great question.
They're so excited to talk about who got in trouble. And you're right that I think that maybe what I'm getting out of it is an opportunity to ask follow-up questions. Like with the 5-year-old, it's like, well, why do you think so-and-so had trouble sitting still on the rug today? Or then with the older kid, it's like, well, why do you think so-and-so was so angry at this other person? And yeah, that's what it is. And I hadn't really decoded it yet. It's like, it's fun to talk about who got in trouble when it's not us, but also it gives you that opportunity.
Well, yeah, and it gives some context, right? I feel like it normalizes people screw up, right? And I feel like one of the greatest things that I've learned to do with my kids is try to stay calm in the face of screw-ups, especially my own, and then get back to, okay, well, what did we learn? Or what did you learn? Or how, like, what do we do differently, right? So it doesn't feel that they're getting a bunch of shame dumped on them, but instead it's like humanizing.
Yes.
But I'm just going to summarize this by saying no lazy questions. We are doing no lazy questions anymore with our kids. We're doing good, thoughtful, fun, gossipy, not edifying questions.
And then
you can do a lazy question. Just know what you're going to get.
Okay.
You're getting a lazy answer.
Yeah. Okay. Noted. We'll put that in the minutes. But I just, since we're talking about friendships, this is one of my super hot button issues. Given, your Tango, our parent company, is all about relationships, given there's a loneliness epidemic raging in America, given the data that you guys shared, which is like, what was it, 40% of high school students feel a persistent sense of despair. For me, so much of that comes back to our social lives. And I realize that's not just it, but I love what you guys wrote in the book. You said, friendships improve the quality of adolescent life by positively affecting everything from kids' academic performance to their general sense of well-being. At the same time, bonds with friends reduce the risk for depression. These benefits are thought to last a lifetime, translating into higher psychosocial functioning in adulthood and even adding years to a person's life, two separate phenomena that are certainly also intertwined. So we're big advocates here about the importance of relational wellness. But this is all a prelude to my own burning question about my own kids. I have noticed, and my boys are 11 and 13, that it feels like there is so much less emphasis on having kids get together.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're doing the vast majority of the outreach. Hey, you want to come over? You want to do a play date? Blah, blah, blah. You can watch the football game. It is like literally 10 to 1. And I live in Colorado now. I lived in New York, Upper West Side before for many years. It feels it's the same. Are we just not likable?
Okay.
Or is it just that other parents are not prioritizing the kids' social lives?
Okay. I have so much to say, and I'm going to try to be really succinct before I pass the ball to Vanessa, who I know has so much to say. Okay. I want to go back to the premise of the question, which was the data about persistent loneliness. That data comes from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. It's a survey that's done every other year on odd years. It's run by the CDC. The last data collection that has been published was from 2021. They just did a 2023 data collection that will be published next year. 2021, I just want you to think back, we were in year 2 of COVID. Half this country, kids were Zoom schooling. Isolation was the mandate. So that data, it's not that the data is wrong, because we were seeing an epidemic of loneliness, and we were seeing peaks in mental health diagnoses before COVID. But some of those numbers are particularly alarming because they were set in a COVID moment. So I think that's very, very important to kind of like level set. The other thing I wanted to say is about the evolution of socialization and friendship from sort of through the tween years. So in the beginning, tween is 8 to 12. It's in between being little and being a teenager, okay? In the beginning of the tween years, you are managing all of their social plans. You have to. They don't have a mechanism to communicate. They're not, I'm hoping an 8-year-old's not texting for their own plans. They're not driving themselves. They're not managing all the logistics, right? By the time they're out the other end of the tween years, they are probably handling all of the logistics, short of physically getting themselves there. And in some cities, they are getting themselves areas where they're jumping on a bike, jumping on a train, jumping on a bus. They are getting themselves there. So it is very important to recognize that what you're living, what you just described, is part of the normal evolution of kids starting to be a little bit more independent about how they engage with one another. Also, they're not interested in us making their friends for them. Okay, Vanessa, go.
But I would say that there's a couple of phenomenon that can feel really personal, Andrea, right? Like you were like, is it just like my family's not likable? And by the way, you and millions of other parents are asking themselves that very question because their kids are not getting together. So online life has become so much more important to kids. If they can play, Xbox over Discord or FaceTime with their friends, that feels just the same as getting together in person. And even though it doesn't feel the same to us, from their perspective, it's the same. They get the same benefits. I mean, they wouldn't use that terminology. So I think that's part of it. I also think that a lot of kids missed a lot of skill building during the pandemic of socialization, of making plans, of all the little building blocks of getting together with people. How do I ask someone if they're available? How do I make a plan with them? How do I know what their schedule is? How do I know what my schedule is, right? Like, there's so many little parts of making plans. And I think a lot of kids missed out on building those skills, and either they're catching up or they've given up, or the parents filled the void and didn't build the skills. And so I do think that's part of what needs to happen. And by the way, it's not just 11 and 13-year-olds. It's 16, 17, and 18-year-olds who didn't build those skills, 4 years back and need to build them. So I think it's a lot of factors. The one other thing I would say about friendships is there's this mythology in our society that adolescents need a gang of friends. You need to have a crew. You need to have a posse. And you guys know because you've read the book, but like a kid only needs one quality friendship to get the benefits that you read about, affecting, counterbalancing mental health and academic performance and a sense of belonging and all of that. They just need one trusted friend. They don't need a whole crew of friends.
In fact, I think, and I'm sure you've both read Rosalind Wiseman's Masterminds and Wingmen, or you know of it. I remember her saying sometimes the kids that have a lot of friends, especially if they're more at top tier in the social circle, they have a lot of stress. That the boys who are that mastermind, they have a huge amount of stress, whereas the boys that are lower on the social totem poles that have one or two really good friends, they tend to report the greatest happiness.
That's right.
That's right. But parents and their baggage going into their kids' adolescence and relationships create these expectations for their kids, like, oh, they only have one or two friends. I'm worried about that because high school is supposed to be a crew, or, oh, but they're not part of the popular quote unquote set. Or so one of the things to be conscious of is like, what are we messaging to our kids about their friends and friendships, and are we contributing to what they worry about in terms of their social relationships?
I wish sometimes, I think about, my own life, and I'll take stock in a wise, enlightened moment and say to myself, wow, I just, like, that was such a terrible thing to say. Or, I try to be more conscious about what I'm thinking about. Like, I'm so type A and so driven and achievement oriented. I'll say things to dumbass things to my kids, like, they're playing video games, and let's face it, they play video games 24 hours if we let them. But, it's like, not so subtle things like, well, you should read more. And it's like, oh my God, how to get them to hate reading. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm trying to, I'm a big reader, and for all the right reasons, we want to develop that part of their brain and not, be as, addicted to digital media, all the forms of digital media. But I guess I want to call myself out here a little bit as a parent that is super committed to being the best parent that I can, and still say, oh my gosh, Vanessa, to your point about the unintended baggage and the kind of leading questions that we ask, or like, well, what's everybody else like? Why are you home by yourself? Like, aren't your friends getting together? Like, and you're trying to help, but it feels like there's a lot that's unconscious that as parents, we'd be wise to try to be more aware of. And I don't know how to do that. I don't know. Do you guys have advice for us?
Well, I'm going to go back to you should read more, because someone on this podcast might have done that exact thing many, many, many times and said that, because there's real anxiety. Like, you see them on video games all the time, and you literally think their brain is liquefying in the reading arena, right?
Oh, yes.
It's like you can't...
I see it oozing out of their ear.
It is so deeply disturbing. Vanessa's like, it must be so hard to be you, Cara, but it's true. It's like, I literally...
I'm constantly having this conversation. I mean, the things
Your
that I
kids-
say.
When I stay at your house, your kids are so much better at doing things like having books open. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. Vanessa's kids read. So, okay, I'm just going to say that's a perfect moment for a do-over where it looks like this. I know I will say to you in the least subtle way possible, you should read more. And I know your eyes are rolling so far into your head that they might get stuck. But I just want to tell you why. I'm going to try to do better and not message it this way because it's not working. But I want to tell you why. It makes me feel really anxious when I see you on games all the time. And I talk to all these people on my podcast and I read all this data and I'm like deep in it. And everything suggests reading more and video gaming less might be better for you. So this is where it comes from. Like, I'm just doing the best I can.
Yeah.
Tell me how to message it better for you so that you won't just, swallow bile when I say it. And, they sometimes will come back with a great way through. And sometimes they'll just say, you know what? I get it. Like, I still love my video games, but thank you for sharing.
Sometimes they're going to come back and say, I hate reading. Like my children were huge readers until 7th grade. And then it's like the moment they assign like the red fern grows or whatever depressing horror show.
So
they're
depressing.
They're like F reading forever.
Forever.
Yeah. I mean, part of that
I
is...
appreciate the keeping it real. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Well, we feel like the graphic novel, like we get stressed out, like, oh, they need to stop reading graphic novels. Those aren't real books. And then the real books they get assigned in school are so depressing. Like, I can still remember sobbing after reading Bridge to Terabithia. And when
Oh, God, no kidding. Yes.
I was like, oh, get ready for a sob fest. And so I think part of it is like being less judgmental about and getting curious. Like, okay, dude, you know that it makes me crazy when I walk in and you're on the Xbox. But like, tell me
for the 10th hour.
Yes. Tell me what you love about it, because I don't game and I don't get it. And just tell me. By the way, that doesn't mean you can't set limits with them also. Like, okay, you can spend 10 hours on Saturday playing. You can spend some time, but like, I want to know what you love about it. What is fun? What do you learn? What is cool about it? Like, and getting really curious.
That leads me to one of my least popular parenting decisions that other parents never liked to hear, which was I allow them to play video games during the school week. And I do that. It's, they have to have relatively good grades to do that. I do that because when I asked that question, my oldest son, who is more wired toward anxiety, was like, this is where I find peace in my brain. And I was like, it seems chaotic to me. So then of course, what happens and how this becomes controversial is that other parents are like, why do you let Isaac play video games during the week? And it's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm not on team no video games, but this kid kind of needs it for his mental health. I need to hear him.
But
I love that meeting him where he is. Sorry, Cara, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what's implied in that story is that everything in moderation. It doesn't sound like he's on video games, for 12 hours from when he comes home from school until the sun comes up the next day. Everything in moderation. And, I'll give you a parallel story, which is when my kids were in preschool, there was one house where there was candy everywhere. Like it was out in order for the kids to actually have increased access. There was candy drawers, there were candy bowls, there was candy everywhere. And I finally said to the mom, I don't get it. Like, what? Tell me, explain the philosophy here. And she said, oh, I want them to be able to make the best choices they can make. So I'm leaving it everywhere so that they don't feel deprived and they won't eat candy all the time. And ironically, for her oldest, that worked. Like, her oldest did not eat a lot of candy. You know what? When you have more than one kid living under a roof, as we all know, the learning curve is steep with numbers 2 and however many more you have, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so her second kid came along and was like, ooh, there's a candy opportunity at every turn. And he just understood what his mom wanted. And so he would just sneak it. So it worked with one kid. It didn't work with another. gaming, I think, is very similar. Like if it works for a certain brain type and it's done in moderation, and it's like, you do you. But you don't just do you as a parent, you do you as a parent-kid dyad. Like it has to be what works for that particular kid because it won't necessarily work for the sibling.
Yeah, I think that's it's so wise. We've had a little of that discussion in my family. My husband, I've been much more keen to put the brakes and really try to almost not force, but engender as much boundaries and so forth as we can. And my husband has a different view. He's like, listen, if you create forbidden fruit when they're beyond you, whether it's too much video game time or screen time or soda or any of those things, if that forbidden fruit that they didn't get, they're going to freak out and not have that self-control when they get older. And so that feels like a very present, healthy tension in our house. All right, what I want to get to, you open the door, Joanna, to unpopular or controversial opinions or perspectives. Who wants to go first? I feel like Vanessa, Joanna, you definitely have some. I have one. Joanna, do you want to start us?
I'll start. So I already said this about the video games. That's controversial. Another one that I have that I'm unfortunately or fortunately known for is I think kids should have social media starting very young on your phone so they learn how to use it when they still care what you think. And I actually learned that from our head editor at Your Tango, Sabrina, that while they care what you think, like 5th grade, you start them on Instagram or something that you can track so you can teach them how to use it correctly. And that makes me very unpopular among the other parents. Also, I don't let my kids do sleepovers. So there you go.
Which was like a huge wow. When I learned that, I fell off my chair. I'm like, what?
Those two things
can they
feel
stay
like
over at
they're
my
in
house?
conflict.
I know.
Those
I
two,
was fascinated by those two. They're like diametrically
opposites.
opposed.
Yeah. I know it seems that way, but I like what you said about the parent-child dyad. I adapted to my own children, and I'll tell you that one of the reasons why I stopped the sleepovers is because I was reporting a big story for the Gates Foundation about male survivors of child sexual abuse. And it was like, there was a theme. There was way too much freedom in most sleepovers. So I think there probably is some compromise and balance in like how much you trust the parents, how much supervision there is. But that was where I kind of had a gut reaction. And then in the long run, I just stood by it. But I don't judge anybody who does sleepovers. It's more me.
Joanna, when we did an episode on sleep to sleep over or not to sleep over on the Puberty Podcast and covered, stuff like screen time and junk food, quote unquote junk food, etc., we got listener comments that were like, how about sexual abuse?
Yeah.
How about substance abuse? Like, we did not cover those topics in the episode, and heard from a lot of people who were like, I don't let my kids sleep over because I know someone who was sexually abused when they did a sleepover. So connected to your point, firearms in the house. That was another topic that came up.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, people have a sense about who the victims of these crimes are. And I was reporting on male survivors only.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was a big wake-up call for a lot of people when I would say that. They'd be like, wait, but boys? It's like, yeah, sorry. But there's my downer. But yeah, also social media, I give them a little more freedom. So, but Vanessa, I'm so curious if you have any controversial parenting takes as a puberty expert and educator.
So I guess my somewhat controversial is like, I don't care how much kind of sexual content my kids see in movies. Like, I don't mind if it's like rated R because people have sex on screen or on a show. But I do care about violence and substance use. So
agreed.
Like Wolf of Wall Street, I watched 3 minutes of it with my 13-year-old, and I was like, oh no, we're turning this off. But like, a Big Mouth, he's he's allowed to watch. I mean, also my brother created it, so it's like a slightly special circumstance, but like, it's gross in the sense that like these kids do wildly weird sexual stuff in the context of the storyline. but I don't have a problem with that. So I guess
People
that
are
would be
shocked that I let my boys watch Big Mouth in case, and I actually encourage them, and I am not related to one of the founders or creators, and I know zero of them, but also my boss, Sabrina, she also was like, no, you show it to them so you can talk to them about it.
Yes.
And also so that they know that you're not freaked out by it, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, sounds like I need to get in the Big Mouth Club because I've never even heard of it.
Oh my, well, prepare
My kids
yourself.
are my oldest is 13, so maybe it's
Not your
where you're
11-year-old. Yeah.
The 13-year-old. You got to judge it on how mature. Andrea, just watch it. And then you can text me and be like, what?
But not with your 13-year-old.
No, watch it first.
yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, got it. Cara, how about you? Do you have any
So-
unpopular advice?
Vanessa stole mine because we're totally in sync about
Because you're Cara and Vanessa.
That's because I'm
Because
Cara
she's
and
body
speaks
Vanessa.
for
wondering.
both of us.
I do. So I'll do another one because I have many unpopular parenting strategies that I employ. So I've always been a fan of keeping healthy food at home so that when they're not at home and they want to eat whatever and do whatever, like what's around at baseline is healthier. And what's unpopular about it is it can look rigid. It really can. It can look like we have nothing fun in our house. And I've become more flexible over the years. Like, I love ice cream. We always are stocked with lots of ice cream. Vanessa makes fun of me because my ice cream bowls are this big. They're teeny tiny.
They're like egg cups.
Oh my God! I know what to send you for Christmas. All right, let's get Cara some decent. Forget her for the kids. They need ice cream.
So
bowls.
funny.
When
So
her
there's a
son
trope
came
there.
and stayed, at our house and we had ice cream, he was like, "Oh, thank God, some like real bowls for the ice cream."
By the way,
ice cream
we
bowl.
have real size bowls. It's just no one uses them for ice cream. Anyways, side note. But my philosophy is, if there's a cleaner slate at home, then when they eat the junk outside of the house, and they've always known, like, I'm a big believer in moderation, so I'm not restrictive at all with them, but I'm very sort of like, let's have the majority of stuff that you put into it onto your body be good for you, and then there's a lot of room for flexibility. But I think it really does. Well, my kids tell me that it's not the favorite snack house, and that I understand.
Apparently not.
Yeah, no,
Duh.
no, I failed at snack house.
They don't
Yeah.
want raw almonds as their snack.
to go with their celery and carrots. No, it's not that
Dried
bad,
seaweed?
but it's close to that bad. You know, it's just like, yeah, but the data. I mean, I'm just gonna defend myself for a second. The data is unbelievable, and I'm in the middle of watching this show called "You Are What You Eat," which is a Stanford twin study about vegan diet, and
It's
I gotta
amazing.
say,
I love that show.
the data is incredible. It's really interesting, and it's like made me feel a whole lot better about my carrot sticks and my, raw
I love
almonds.
that. Well, the thing my son has been, he is intolerant to wheat, so we have the Heavenly Hunks from Costco.
Oh, I love those.
That are I feel like that's a pretty good snack. That's filling. That's not quite as bad as the dried tofu and carrot stick. So
I love it.
shout out to the Heavenly
Having
Hunks.
grown up
right
in
now.
a house that had carob chips and candied lavender was the closest thing we got to
That's
candy.
just such a mistake.
And
It's
having
just a tactical
snuck
error.
a lot of junk food or like gorged myself at other people's houses because nothing happened. I'm just offering up a counter argument. I have yet to watch You Are What You Eat, which I'm sure will shame and depress me in equal measure.
No, it won't. It's
no,
okay.
It's non-shaming. It's
Oh,
not
good.
It's
shaming.
not.
Good. It'll just make me feel inadequate. Wonderful.
No. I watched it, and still last night when I was sad about something, I ate an entire sleeve of cookies. And you know what? I accept myself for how I am.
Yeah,
It's Girl
totally
Scout cookie
non-shaming.
season. I'm so excited for my sleeves of Thin Mints. Wait,
Yeah.
Andrea, we need yours.
Yes.
Oh yes. My my controversial, unpopular opinion is that kids should be allowed to sleep with their parents whenever they want. Mine are a little bit older, and they're, it's like, if you want to come in and cuddle, it kind of drives my husband a little bit crazy. But
What
that's,
does it say about my family that my kids like have no interest in
Too many lavender chips? You're giving them too many lavender chips?
No. We in my house there
No,
are
I'm
snack.
kidding.
We have a lot of,
Okay.
and then when we moved out of the city and into the suburbs, and I had like a proper pantry, my kids are like, "Mom, you have a Costco problem. Like, we need to like address that." But when my oldest was little and he would be sick, and we'd be like, "Come in, come snuggle, come sleep with us," and he'd like lay there for 10 seconds, and then he'd be like, "No, I'm going back to my room."
That just shows you how every kid is different. It really does. Like, that's how my kids always wanted to be in bed when they were 2 and 3, and then like around 4, and maybe because I had 2 boys close together, they wanted to be in their own room. They shared a room, and they were like, bye.
Yeah,
But
you
my
guys
daughter,
are unfun.
my daughter will for sure be climbing into our bed until she's 17. And I'm with Andrea. I'm like, get in here. As long as I'm getting enough sleep overall,
Yes,
I'm all for it.
the weekly average.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
Andrea, do
you
they
just
still
don't get-
come in? Sorry, go ahead, Cara.
Oh, you don't get the cuddles back. I'm in your camp too. I gotta say, I have one who would and one who wouldn't, and so I was the one who would. I'm like, come here,
Yeah, come on, bring it. Yeah,
I-
I mean, I'm hugging on my kids all the time.
I will say that my oldest was not a cuddler, and my second was not a cuddler, and now at the other side of adolescence, they're actually incredibly affectionate in a way they weren't when they were younger. So for those of you who are like, I'm never going to have a cuddler, don't lose hope, because they could surprise you and turn out to be really snuggly when they get older.
Well, but isn't that one of the big takeaways as a parent? It's just how everything changes, right? And it's like almost, I feel like we want them little and cuddly, and and then they grow hair and all these, and they get stinky, and all these things happen, and we worry. But part of me just, I'm probably giving something to myself to calm my amygdala, to say like, it's all okay, right? And I just feel like there's so much. I was actually, in doing the prep work for our show, just thinking about, I don't know any moms that say, oh my God, I'm crushing it, especially working moms like we all are. Like, part of me just wants to say, as we conclude here, since we got to wrap up in just a sec, just, first of all, big thank you to the incredible work you guys are doing and research and advice. I know you're changing lives for the better, so thank you. But also to all the parents, but moms in particular, that, kind of by definition of those maternal instincts, if we could just every now and then tell ourselves, wow, I do so much so well and so right, because nobody tells us to do that.
I think the worry, though, is that as soon as you say it, the other shoe is going to drop and something's going to happen.
Yes.
Right.
You don't want to jinx yourself.
And
How
so
about writing a
you-
parenting book?
Yeah,
What's
please.
scarier than that as far as the jinx?
Oh, and then
Yeah.
the Schadenfreude, because everyone's waiting for your kids to not be right. And so I think it's what you're saying is so important. And it's really okay to do it quietly to yourself in your own head, so
Quietly
you
to
don't
yourself.
feel that vulnerability if you're worried
Mhm.
about feeling that vulnerability. But if you have the kinds of friends around you who you can shout it from the rooftops, and they can too, and then when things go wrong, you can also lean on each other, that's amazing. That's the village it takes.
Our friend Eliza Pressman likes to say, you just have to do well more often than not.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's like so gratifying. Like, I feel
It's
so
so-
much
it's
less
such a good
pressure.
framing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like 52% of the time. Just aim.
She says 51. In fairness, she says
She says
But Vanessa's
51.
competitive, so Vanessa's like,
No,
I'm going to make it 52.
No, I'm just aiming for 37% of the
Yeah.
time. I'm working my way up to 52. But then
Yeah.
it's like, and here's the thing, and Cara talked about this earlier, like, it's actually so much more valuable for our kids to see us not doing well and to own it and to like
Yes.
talk about it and to take the do-over, or to talk about the day we had, or to talk about how we messed up and to take responsibility for it. And more than it is to like present this perfect picture to our kids. And that, I think, is critical for all of you who are going to be on this journey and screw up so many times the way we all have. You always have another chance to do it again.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. You always have another chance to do it again as a parent. I love that. Okay, well, we are right at the hour. So I want to thank you ladies, again, thank you so much. You can listen to Vanessa and Cara on the Puberty Podcast. Find them at orderofmagnitude.co. And of course, you can read their amazing new book, This Is So Awkward. Thank you so much. I hope we can get you guys back on the show. There's so much more to talk about.
We would love it. Thank you.
This was amazing.
Yay!
Oh, love them. Cara, Vanessa, come back. Let's eat ice cream together and carrot chips and dried lavender. No, they're awesome.
Candied lavender.
Candied lavender. Okay.
I do
So
like
much
those
better than
lavender.
Hey.
Those lavender French candies are kind of yummy, actually, but
Are they?
Not for
I've never
kids.
heard of a lavender candy.
it's a
I didn't know
real
you could
grandma
eat
thing.
Lavender.
Don't eat lavender. I'm just going to give some advice, my unsolicited opinion. No, but Joanna, they are awesome. I know you've been so excited to get them on, and just wow, they they really, I feel like, have had so much success and traction in their book on such an important topic. So really cool to have them on. So Joanna, what's your number one thing that you just took away from our wonderful discussion with them?
I think we talk a lot about the importance of like making that repair when we screw up. And I think we are pretty comfortable with the idea of being able to say we're sorry to our kids and the value of modeling that. But I loved the do-over because it's a different thing than an apology and a mea culpa. It's more like, hey, listen, I kind of handled that wrong. Let me try again. And it's a little bit different than an apology. And I love it because it puts it in your head about, like, as you walk away from having lost your temper or saying the rude thing, you're like, oh, I could go do a do-over right now. I love it. I love that. I'm totally
I think it
going with it.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a great thing to model, right? I feel like you're right. We, in my family too, it's about the repair. It's about the apology. It feels like the do-over, it almost like takes the sting out a little bit, and not to make it our kids less accountable or ourselves less accountable, but it feels like it's a lower emotional threshold to get through. So I love that. Do-over. We're going to do more do-overs in my house.
Also, it's like we always talk about the modeling. It models for them that they can come back, not just to apologize, which sometimes can feel embarrassing or shameful, but also like, hey, let me do a do-over. And maybe they don't get to the apology right away, but we know what they mean. And then maybe after we're accepting of the do-over, then they're more likely to feel comfortable apologizing.
Yeah, I agree. Brian, what about you?
I wanted to, it's so funny. I wanted to chime in when we were talking about the whole reading thing. And
tell me I should read more?
No.
No, you read a lot.
I went through a cycle of like doing the whole like, I don't like reading, whatever. And when I loved it as a kid, but what did bring me back into it was the graphic novels.
Yes.
And when they were talking about like, don't be judgy about like what the kids are actually reading, be stoked that they're reading. And that was definitely me, where it was like, I was reading all these graphic novels because in my brain it was like less, I don't know, like nerdy is not the right word, but like less schoolwork than like a book was. And then, but you don't realize like, even if it's comic books or whatever, 80% of a comic book is still text on page. It just also has pictures. Yeah. So it's like those little things are nice stepping stones to getting kids back into like actual reading. So it was like right when I was about to say something, she was like, and then graphic novels. And I was like, yes.
Okay, they got it. They got it covered. Yeah. My son reads a lot of graphic novels. I'm like, oh, good. That's great. So
I'll reassure you too also that there was something that when I was deep in comic book media critique right before I came to Your Tango, or maybe right around that same time, there is a great academic analysis of graphic novels in comic books that it actually engages the brain more than reading, because there's a space between the panels in which your child will creatively insert story. So it's almost like you have a film that you're watching and it's like a one part of it and then another part, and without even realizing we're doing it, we're constructing a narrative between the panels. And then Brian's a photographer. It makes me think you grew up reading these graphic novels. They're all a frame. It's one frame. So it engages this different part of our brain. So we can be happy that our kids are reading graphic novels, because maybe it's even doing I don't want to say better, but it lights up even more parts of their little brains.
Huh. Well, look
Yeah, I
at
love
that. What about you, Andrea? What's your takeaway?
I loved, she gave me the advice that I needed when Vanessa talked about listen more and lecture less. Oh my God, my kids have told me so many effing times, Mom, quit lecturing me. And it's like, but.
Yeah, but
right?
you need to hear
and it's
this.
like you feel so committed as a parent to guide them, and and it's just like, oh, I know better. So I want to get a pillow and a hat and a tattoo of all those things so that I do that because I know better. But then I don't follow that advice. I'm
going to send you that clip of, I think it's Vanessa. She literally just said, zip it. And we can crochet it on a little pillow, like do a little embroidery that just says zip it for both of us because we are talkers.
What if we had like a little a sweater or something that had a zipper on it and just like zip it?
Just zip it. Yeah, we're just gonna we've got a little metaphor here. Just zip it. Oh my God, I need it. Okay, well, this was an amazing show, and we're just grateful for everybody who is watching and listening. If you like our show, please subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, iHeart, Audible, Spotify, you name it. We love hearing from you. You can write questions or give us advice or feedback at openrelationships@yourtango.com. And did I get it? I always have to ask you, Brian, did I get it all?
You nailed it.
I nailed it. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. And keep tuning in to Open Relationships. We're here for you.
Yeah.